Welcome back to another episode of the After Hours podcast. I'm your host, Francisco. Co-host today, I have Daniel, and we are joined with the founder of Greenwood Brewing, Megan Greenwood. What's going on?
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Thanks for being a guest. You guys are located out in Arizona, correct?
Yes, downtown Phoenix in sunny Arizona in the 100-degree heat right now.
Yeah, that's tough, but at least it's not. At least it's not like humid and cloudy and rainy. I mean, that's how it is up here in Ohio right now. It's not enjoyable. I don't know if 100 degrees is better, but this is not great.
You win some, you lose some.
Yeah, you win some, you lose some.
That's true. We can't complain when we have over 300 days of sunshine each year.
Oh my God, it must be nice. Yeah. Do you guys ever see snow?
We did. Oh my gosh, this year we actually saw, it was like it looked like snow. It felt like snow. But I don't think it was technically snow, but it was like the one day in probably 5 years that you get snow in Phoenix. And we saw it at the brewery this year, which was really fun. So we stuck our beers in the snow and took a picture and invited everybody to come out. It was cool, but you'd very, very rarely see that in Phoenix. But if you go up north just a couple hours to Flagstaff and Prescott, and where the high desert is located, they have snow just like you guys in Ohio. It's snow for the whole winter, which is something people don't know about Arizona.
Huh. That's crazy. So are you born and raised in Arizona?
No, I'm actually from Iowa, which is
close
to you guys.
Yeah.
So I'm actually went to the University of Iowa, so I'm a Hawkeye. Where did you guys go to school?
We went to the University of Toledo.
Nice. Yeah, so I lived in Iowa until I was 22, and then I moved to Boston and moved to Arizona with a job from Boston, and that's actually where my story starts, really. So is once I moved to Arizona with Greenwood Brewing.
Very fun, very fun. And then when did you start up Greenwood Brewing?
Yeah, so I moved when I graduated from Iowa with an engineering degree. So I'm an industrial engineer, which is my focus was manufacturing, process, quality, and then really business management. And so when I graduated, I worked throughout college, I worked at Whirlpool Corporation making refrigerators, John Deere making small square balers. People in Ohio know what that is. I worked for Procter & Gamble making Herbal Essences conditioner. And then when I graduated, I worked for Eaton Corporation, which is a power management company making the gray boxes that are on everybody's house and or buildings that manage your electricity. And so my history comes from manufacturing and working in manufacturing plants. In Phoenix, I was actually lived in Chandler, and we had a manufacturing facility in Chandler that I worked out of the office. But I moved to Boston with my company. Loved Boston. Everybody, have you guys interviewed anybody from Boston?
Boston specifically? No.
Massachusetts in general?
Yeah.
They have some good beer up there. That's kind of where a lot of my inspiration initially came from, was a lot of the breweries in Boston, because they were, kind of light years ahead of even where I was. In Iowa, when I graduated college, it was like we just were getting access to Sierra Nevada in our bars. We were just getting access to some of these craft breweries, and for the majority of my college and beer drinking days, it was Busch Light and Bud Light and Coors Light, Miller Light, and you really didn't have access to anything else. And so when I was leaving Iowa City, it was like my last 2 years of college were really where we were able to enjoy some flavorful beer. But then I moved to Boston, and that was really where my eyes opened, because in New England in general, there were so many breweries and that's where the birthplace of Boston Beer Company was located, and so a lot of the breweries came out of the being inspired by home brewers and the New England breweries, and that's kind of where my love for beer really became really strong, was in Boston. Um, and I moved to Arizona with my job. I was working in alternative energy mostly, and I was working in solar, and it's not very sunny in Boston, but it sure is sunny in Phoenix. So I moved to Arizona and in 2012, and and I've been here ever since. When I was living in Boston, I lived in Back Bay, and it was super expensive as a young person living in, the heart of Boston. And I had a 300 square foot apartment that I was paying. I think I was paying like $14.50 a month for it. And I was just like, I was coming from Iowa City. I was like, this is so expensive. I'm never here. I'm never in my apartment. I'm always out and about. And I was like, I'm going to move to Phoenix, and I'm going to buy a house right when I get there. And so that's what I did. And I bought a house, and then I was totally house poor. And so I needed a roommate. So I found a roommate, and we became really good friends. And he for my birthday, one of my birthdays, he bought me a homebrew kit and was like, I really think you'd enjoy brewing, and you should just try it out. And so that's exactly where the story starts, is a homebrew kit that I got for my birthday at age 24, I think, and started homebrewing as a hobby with my roommate and my neighbor, and just completely fell in love with it. So I was brewing in my garage. We had a KZ that had four tap handles, and it could hold eight corny kegs, 5-gallon kegs. And so we had 8 kegs of beer on tap in my garage, available on tap in my garage. And we had parties, or we would invite the neighborhood, and everybody would eat pizza and good food and and then we'd drink all of our beer. I was very popular back then, having all this beer for everybody's use. And then it kind of became this focus of mine. And at the same time, I was in corporate and I moved into a sales position. And so I was selling to engineers, and the majority of my role was, as project management, and making sure that our, selling the product, and then it was for big utility scale solar projects. And so we'd have to have really important conversations about the product and how we're going to get their power plant to operate, and in the timely fashion. And every time I would go have these honest conversations, I was doing those over a craft beer. And a lot of the reason was because a lot of them were men, but I also loved beer. That was my beverage of choice, and obviously my hobby kind of showed that. And so I just felt like that conversation, those important conversations, were always had over a craft beverage and craft beer. And as a woman in the industry, as a woman that has experience brewing, and was really, at that point, I was really diving into understanding beer. I did not feel like there was any representation for women in beer. I didn't feel like I was being marketed to. I didn't feel like I was being considered as a consumer. When we'd go out to have these beers, I was always automatically assumed that I was going to be drinking the fruit beer and not the double IPA, or, and that's just kind of the stigma about women in beer, is that they don't know what they want. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know anything about beer. And that was totally opposite. And I felt like the women who I talked to also felt that way, but I didn't really know if that was the case. So I did some research. I put my engineering hat on and conducted research, and did a survey of over 200 women, and really dove into some interviews with some women, and found that over 75% of women felt underrepresented in the beer industry. And that was very similar to the information that the Brewers Association was doing on women beer drinkers at the same time in 2016. And it was very clear that women were feeling underrepresented. They weren't feeling like they were marketed to. And one of the statistics I found was that there were less than 2% of breweries in the whole country that were founded by females only, that were female founded. 2% less than 2%, which became so clear to me why I didn't feel like I was being marketed to, because there was nobody behind the product that was a woman. And there were less than 4% of head brewers that were women in the whole country. That's still the case. Both of those numbers are still the case, which is crazy when you think about it. And 20% of breweries are owned by men and women, and then 78% of breweries are owned by men exclusively. And so when you're marketing and you're like creating this product, you're thinking about yourself as a consumer. Well, women and men are very different, and have very different needs and outlooks in their buying habits and what they want in a product. And so that was like apparent. So I was like, I think there's a space here. There's a space for me here. I think we need to kind of redefine what beer is for women. At the time, I Google searched the images of women in beer, and it was astounding. It's probably exactly what you would imagine, which is like half naked women and like women in German lederhosen or whatever you call that. And I was like, this is not real women in beer at all. Like, women are just sitting around a table just like a man. And we're drinking beer, and enjoying it as their beverage of choice. And so that was kind of where this all started. And I sat on this idea for a few years, and then finally decided to go all in, leave my corporate job and start the brewery.
Heck yeah, that's super cool. And like, obviously, like you said, there's a huge market for it, and it's very like unsaturated, because I mean, like, you're taking that initiative, and because, like you said, there really wasn't anything out there, and you're kind of like taking on that role of kind of like starting the movement. So like, I think that's really cool of you to be able to do that. What else was I gonna say?
I thought something that was pretty compelling in the story and when you guys first started was the fact that you guys were doing a little bit of customer discovery preemptively, so you could really define your market, and then you also had statistics to back it up as to why people were feeling the way that they did. So it was more of putting logic and emotion together to create an ideation of like a business plan of sorts, even before starting a product that you don't want to waste time and effort into. But obviously now with the backed up customer research, customer discovery, market research, I think you positioned yourself really well in that sense.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, this wasn't like, I don't know if this happens to most people who are entrepreneurs or small business owners or whatever, that I wasn't just there to start something that I didn't think I was fixing a problem. Like, I felt like there was a need for something that we could provide. And that's ultimately why I left my job, was because I also really wanted to work for myself, and I had some experiences working in my job that were kind of keeping me in this bubble, in this box that I just didn't fit. And but at the same time, it wasn't like I was just going to jump into anything. I really felt like there was an opportunity here for something new for women that they could really align with. And so we started. This was in the end of 2017 that I decided to make this jump. And so the first person I talked to, so I still had a full-time job at the time. And so the first person I spoke with was a banker. And the banker was like, oh, so you have no experience brewing commercially. You have manufacturing experience, which is great, but you have never built a manufacturing facility. You've never had never been a brewer, worked in a brewery, been an assistant brewer, cellar person, anything. She's like, that's really cute. This is so cute. You want to open a brewery. That's adorable. But you've got to prove it to us that you can actually make this happen. She's like, also like, you've never owned a business yourself before, all these things. It's like, prove to us that you can make a product that sells and we'll consider you in a year. And so that's what I did. So I found a way in Phoenix, in Arizona, you have to have a microbrewer's license in order to sell beer. And in order to get your microbrewer's license, you have to have a fully functioning brewery. So it's kind of like chicken and the egg. You have to have the whole brewery ready to go before you can even sell beer. And I didn't have that, and I wasn't ready to invest. I couldn't get the money to lend my $1 million project cost, until I had the product, and I couldn't make the product until I had the money. So it was like this weird situation. So I found a brewery in Arizona that I just kind of went knocking on brewery doors. I went to the Pink Boot Society meeting, and I met this woman who was a tap room manager, and I was just asking everybody if they had open fermenters, because if they had open fermenters, that meant that's where your bottleneck is in beers. You're in your fermenters, and or your bright tanks or whatever you use. But that's where. So every time I would go around, I'd ask, "Do you have any open fermenters?" And that would tell me they have excess capacity, that they're not utilizing their brewery to the fullest, to the max capacity they could. And so this tap room manager was like, yeah, I think we do have open fermenters. We have open fermenters every so often. And I was like, awesome. So I reached out to them. It was a husband-wife team. Their names are it was called Freakin' Brewing Company in Peoria, Arizona. Awesome couple. Took a huge risk. They ended up letting me use their microbrewer's license. He was a lawyer, so he knew how to do all the contract work, which was great. We put Greenwood Brewing as a DBA under Freakin' Brewing Company, and they let me sell under Greenwood Brewing beer under their license for 2.5 years while we were building the brewery. So after that year, I talked to the banker again, who she did not give me the money, but she was like, good job. You actually did it. Great. But I just went and I asked probably every single bank in Phoenix, continued to get no's, just all the time. And finally I found a bank that was willing to give me a loan. And that's kind of where this, like the next phase of this project starts, which is the actual build out of the project. And so have you guys ever been to downtown Phoenix? Ever been to Phoenix?
I've been to like Chandler, but I've never been like downtown Phoenix.
So downtown Phoenix it's a downtown of, a major metropolitan city. One of the biggest cities in the country. I think we're like number 5. And the culture is unlike anything else in Phoenix metro area. It's an awesome community, super diverse. And so when I was like tons of young people, tons of retirees, it's just like completely like age, diversity, ethnicity, background, history, everything. So when I was living in Chandler, I decided, I was like, Chandler was kind of a family-friendly area. It's a suburb of Phoenix. And so I was not really I was single. Didn't have a family, didn't have any kids. And I was like, I need to go somewhere that there are people like me. And so I ended up putting my house for rent and moved to downtown because I loved downtown. And I'd walk up 5th Street, which is a cute craftsman style street. There are businesses on the street, but they're all in these little 1900s craftsman style homes that were converted into retail over the past 15, 20, I guess 1990, so 30 years. And I'd walk up the street, and every time I'd walk up, I'd be like, this is where I want to put this brewery. This is where I want to put this brewery. And, but it's totally impractical to put a brewery in a 900 square feet craftsman style house. And so when I was doing this kind of proof of concept, I had a customer of mine reach out. We actually launched our first beer, which became our flagship beer, the Her Story Pale Ale. It was the only beer I made for like 2 years because I didn't have very much space at this brewery, and I didn't have anybody working with me. I was the owner, the operator, the brewer, the seller, the delivery person for a long time until I got a delivery person. So we were selling this Her Story, which is still one of our number one beers, one of our flagship beers. And I had a customer call me that owned, we launched Her Story on March 8th, International Women's Day, which was awesome. And we had a poster up that said Her Story is here or whatever. And this customer called, and they were a bookstore, and they had a bar in their bookstore called First Draft Book Bar. And the bookstore was called Changing Hands. And if you're from Phoenix, you know Changing Hands. It's an adorable bookstore. But they're like, is your beer name called Her Story? They're like, we want this beer in our bookstore. Like, it's so perfect. Well, the owner of Changing Hands, I ended up meeting her at the bookstore. We did a bunch of events with them. And she was like, I have this property. It's on 5th Street in Roosevelt. And we want to turn it into a beer garden. And I was like, 5th Street in Roosevelt. Like, so I was just like literally going down the street saying like, this is where I want to be. It was like manifestation 101. And she was like, yeah. I was like, I'm looking for a brewery location. Can we let's talk. So over the course, this was in 2018 where we started this conversation. We ended up turning this vacant parking lot that she had on the corner of 5th Street and Roosevelt Street, which is Roosevelt Row. It's our kind of our city center of downtown. And right on Roosevelt, which is like, it's the best location you could ask for in downtown, in my opinion, that I could have asked for, I should say. And we took this vacant lot that I just never even see. I never even saw this vacant lot because it just was like you'd walk right past it. And we turned a vacant lot into the brewery, a tiny brewery, which we yield between 1,000 and 2,000 barrels out of this small brewery, like 1,100 square feet, in the heart of a downtown district. So we built this brewery, and we transformed an existing building to be our tap room over the course of the next 2.5 years. So we were slated to open in March of 2020. Obviously, we know how this story goes. We luckily did not open before all of COVID happened. But we ended up opening our doors in July of 2020 last year. Over that 2.5 year period, it just building the facility, and just knowing that this was exactly where I wanted to be, and investing in that space to make sure that we were going to succeed. So, so we opened. We're actually celebrating our 1-year anniversary on July 18th this year. So,
heck yeah,
3 weeks, which is crazy.
That's so cool. And then the way we actually came across you guys is we saw you on Kickstarter. Could you talk a little bit about the whole Kickstarter process?
Totally, yeah. So once I realized how much money I needed, which was, so we built the building together with my landlord, and we transformed the other building together. So there was a lot of construction costs along with our brewery costs. So the total amount that I was going to lend was just under $900,000 was what I needed. And at the time, I think it was like 750 is what I was estimating, but obviously that increased over the next year. But I wanted to raise, so you have to have at least 20% cash for anything you lend. And I did not have that much cash that I was able to put down. So I could put, I think it was like half or 60% or something, or I forget exactly what it was, but I needed $68,000 is what I needed for the rest. So I had so many people that were like, "Oh, you should do a Kickstarter. You should do a Kickstarter." If you're ever looking to do a Kickstarter, please talk to somebody who's done a Kickstarter before. It was, holy cow, stressful and tons of work. I had like 5 people working on that campaign for like the entire 2 months, nonstop. Luckily, I had a team helping me, like just friends and like my sister's friends that were helping me. But it was, the way that works is you kind of pick your raise, and then you put together your packages that you want to offer to people. And then it takes probably a month to set up with Kickstarter. And then you either reach your goal and get your money, or you don't reach your goal and you get nothing. So it's an all or nothing kind of a gig with Kickstarter. So we were aiming to raise $68,000 in 2 months over the holidays, which was so dumb. I will never recommend doing that for anybody. It was like November to January. I think we closed on January 9th. So it's like everybody's like in holiday mode. Nobody's checking their emails. Nobody cares about anything but their time off with their family, which rightfully so, I agree. And so we were like, I was blocked on Instagram and Facebook for reaching out to people every single day. I wasn't blocked every day, but you can only reach out to like 100 people a day or something, or like 80. I forget what the max was. And so I'd max that out every day. And like during it, I realized I was like getting kicked off, so then I'd have like a week that I couldn't reach out to people. We were reaching out to like 5,000 people a day on LinkedIn. By the end of it, it was crazy. I mean, I feel like I still have people that are like getting my messages on LinkedIn that are like, "Oh, is this still going on?" Like 2 years later. But it was like, we ended up getting an anonymous match like 5 days before we were gonna close the entire Kickstarter. I had raised by that point like half of the money, maybe not even half. And I was like, we need momentum. There's going to be we need the momentum here. And so we had a $5,000 match on one day, which raised us. Then we got the match, so it kicked us up $10 grand in one day, which was a huge momentum boost. And so then like each day after that, it was like we had to raise like almost $10,000 a day. By the beginning of the last day, we had like $15,000 we had to raise. So you're at like $50,000 at this point, more than that, 53. And you're like, I raised 53,000 already. And we might lose it all after all this because we can't get our last 15,000. And they're really strict. Like you can't put the money in yourself. They look at every single transaction for like the next 10 days after you close to make sure like you didn't contribute the money. So like that day it was like friends and family. I was like desperately calling around to our neighbors to be like, will you contribute? Will you donate? It was crazy. We hit our goal 50 minutes before the close of the Kickstarter. It was crazy. People still talk about it. They're like, we were on our computer, we were refreshing every minute, we were like waiting, and like people were like reaching out, like, do I need to put more money in? Do we need to put more money in? It was just like, it was almost comical. But it was crazy and so stinking stressful. I do not know that I'd do it again. I'd probably rather go and ask like every single friend or family member of mine to contribute $1,000 than do that all over again, to be honest with you. But it was a success, and so like hindsight's 2020. You can't really, and I can't really say anything. We hit our goal, but it was intense. It was intense process, that's for sure. I don't know if everybody's story is like that, but it was crazy.
That sounds so unbelievably stressful.
It was so stressful, and like nobody tells you. So my landlord actually was like, "You should do this," because they had done it for one of their bookstores, and like their husband and wife. And the husband was telling me, you should do this. And so then I reached out to the wife, Cindy, who is the owner of Changing Hands Bookstore. I asked her, I ended up asking her like mid raise, like, is this really what it was like for you? And she's like, if you would have asked me to do Kickstarter, I would have told you not to do it. I was like, why did you let me do this? This is crazy. And she was like, she's like, we hired a full-time person, 40-hour a week person that we paid to help us raise this money. Like full-time, one person. And then all of them, like they have a few owners and like all of their staff were helping the whole time, which is like 15 people. Nobody really tells you that you kind of need an army to do this raise. We did get like a lot of like strangers that just believed in the story and wanted to see somebody succeed, and probably had a ton of cash that they were just like, oh, this story sounds better than, I'll help this person out. So we did get like people who I had no connection with other than literally LinkedIn that contributed. So, and then, since then they've been followers of the brewery ever since. And it's, it's crazy. It's wild. It was wild. But
that's intense.
yeah.
Well, if you know of any caring, loving souls out there that would like to help donate, there's actually one going on in Toledo right now, Quench and Tempered. They started their campaign,
2 weeks? A week ago?
About a week ago.
A week ago, yeah.
So they're going through the process right now.
Good luck to them. I mean, I really do believe, I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I hope that they succeed. It is a hard gig. But, you can do it. People do it every day.
Heck
That's
yeah.
true. When you first had the idea for your brewery, did that come when you were living in Boston, or was it after you had moved to Phoenix?
Yeah, it was when I was home brewing was really when it started. It's kind of like a shower thought, like when you get those thoughts, like this, like brilliant ideas when you're like in the shower, or like on a walk, or like somewhere where you're by yourself and you're like, wow, this would be a really good business idea, and I think I really want to do this. And I told my roommate and my neighbor at the time, I was like, I think we should really focus on a female consumer. And obviously they were both men. They were like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. And it ended up that they didn't, obviously want to do the brewery like full time anyway. But that just never left my head. After that, it was like, no, I really think that we need to focus on a woman as a consumer. I mean, no one else is thinking of a woman. I couldn't think of a single brewery. You tell me, can you think of what beer do you think of when you think of women? Like a woman targeted brand, or like a brand that like.
Yeah, I think of like White Claws. I think of like seltzers, but that's also because I just recently graduated college, and that's just like the in thing for like tailgating and parties. And I'll drink them too. Like I think they're good, but that's what I think of personally.
Yeah.
Me personally, I think of Truly,
Oh,
which
so
is
like another
also a
seltzer.
seltzer.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Like pre-seltzer. Okay, so seltzers for sure, but like pre-seltzer. Seltzers only came out like in the last 2.5 years.
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Pre-seltzer, maybe like Michelob Ultra Light or like, yeah, I'd say that probably.
I
Yeah.
remember I remember seeing in my marketing class like uh where we were going over like branding or something, and they're talking about how different beers are branded, and I remember like seeing one random example where it's like they're like, oh yeah, and they're starting to have like beers marketed towards women, and there's like one random photo of like one beer that I remember seeing, but other than that I can't recall anything.
Yeah. I mean, there aren't. And Michelob
Yeah.
Ultra is the only one that I could think of. And I was like, Michelob Ultra is a great beer for what it is, like, and it's packaged well. Women don't like when their beer gets warm. I don't like when my beer gets warm. I don't know if men really care about it or not, but like
No, no, cold beer, definitely.
yeah, right. So like, obviously you always want a cold beer, but like I won't finish my beer if it's warm. I won't even finish it. And a lot of women are like that. They don't even like 16-ounce pints. They would rather have a 12-ounce beer because it's not going to get warm on them because she's going to drink it a little slower. And so right now our package is in 16-ounce cans because during COVID there was no access to aluminum. Um, but but eventually our package will be in 12-ounce cans, probably skinny 12-ounce cans, because that's really, a woman wants something that's a little sleeker. Her hands are smaller. They're physically smaller. So she wants something that fits easily in her hand. I'm holding an organic seltzer right now or not seltzer, it's a seltzer water. But I'm holding this seltzer water that I like to drink because it's skinny. I like to drink it because it's in a skinny can, which is, so there are just differences within women as the consumer that maybe aren't the same for men, that you just don't even think about, because mostly all of the beers are made with a man in mind. Same with ABV. Some women don't want a high ABV beer. They want it to be flavorful. They want it to be delicious, but they may not want it to be high ABV because she's just, normally she's a little smaller than a guy, and she's not going to be able to drink a 7 and 8% beer and then drive home afterward. Some women, I'm not saying that that's everybody and not saying that's every situation, because I love myself a 7.5 or 8 or 9.2. We have a Belgian Tripel, which was my very first brewed beer ever, as a home brewer. And I love that beer. So we make that beer and I drink that beer. But if I want to have a couple with my friends, I want it to be a little bit lighter where I can drive home afterward and I don't have to be worried, or I can still function or still think or still be myself, whereas a lot of the men who come to my tap room, they're like, what's your highest ABV? That's all. That's their first question. And I know you guys know people or have been that person before, especially in college, where that comes out of your mouth. But a lot of the men I talk to are like, no, I'm always looking at the ABV. I'm always looking for a high ABV. Is that right?
I can see it.
Yeah, I can see it.
I do take it into consideration, but it's like it's like a combination. I'm looking for like a higher ABV, but also I'm looking for something that's going to taste good.
Yeah, I would say I'm more looking to, well, one, if I'm going somewhere, I'm gonna get something that I'm familiar with to start. That's just typically how I go, and then the second or third beer is when I'll say, hey, like, what are your guys's specials? Do you guys have any like local like IPAs or like craft beers on tap or anything like that? But typically, I like to start with what I know, and then I'll get a little bit more adventurous. But definitely for me, it's more about taste. I could care less about the ABV.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the taste has to be there.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of like the neutral point of everything. The flavor has to be there, but it's past the flavor. Once you get is when you get into the details, where it's like, okay, are we thinking about this? What do our consumers like? Is anybody making this for our consumer? And who is our consumer? And I just think that that stuff is super interesting. And obviously, it's I'm generalizing in some of the things that I said earlier. There's not a perfect recipe for everyone to like put into one box, but it's thinking about all of it. Because like most breweries don't think about the woman's hand size. Most breweries don't think about that, or don't even know that women will leave their beer because it's warm. And that, like, my husband would never leave a beer if it was warm. Like, I feel like it's just very different. So, and it just, they're just like, small things like that where it's like, I as the Michelob Ultra was the one beer that you guys said before seltzer, and I'm pre-seltzer, was where like I'm like already old in beer. I've only like been brewing for like 6 years, but it's already aged. I'm already aging myself, and so we when you have the Michelob Ultra, that's your light pilsner, which is there a space for the light pilsner as you guys who grew up with craft get older? Are you going to continue drinking craft and seltzers? Are you going to be your thing? And like maybe there's a space for that light beer when you're going to your bachelor parties or you're going on the river or boat or whatever? Or is there like but is it going to be the majority of what you drink is going to be something really flavorful? Maybe it's an IPA that's lighter, lower ABV, lower calorie, but still just as flavorful, really juicy. And that's like a question that I just ask in general, is like, is that gonna, like, where's beer's future here? And so that's where for us, we're looking to be that Michelob Ultra, but craft. Not Michelob Ultra, but the women, like a beer that women really seek out because of the product, because of what it tastes like, because of what it feels like, because of what it represents for them, and making a craft product for that, because there isn't a craft competitor of a Michelob Ultra. Really.
Right. And I think one of the cool things too to consider is now that I feel like there is more of a trend of, more inclusiveness. At least there's starting to be more of a trend of a more inclusiveness in the brewing industry, that they're starting to get more beverages that are focused towards women and not just everything focused towards men. I think one of the cool things that's kind of turning into is like the standard cliche used to be like, oh, you're a man, so you have to drink beer. But now it's getting to the point where like it's getting more acceptable. I would say it's a work in progress, but it's more acceptable for like men to drink quote unquote like fruity, girly drinks, where like, like I can sit down and grab, like an ice or a Mike's Hard Lemonade and not get poked fun at or anything like that. And I think what is really cool about this is like now that like there's these different flavored drinks that are coming out. It's like seltzers, for example. It's kind of opening the horizon to what's possible, to what can be really created. And so like one question I was thinking, just to add on top of that, this is kind of like going in the back of my mind. So like we're big LaCroix fans, and one of my favorite LaCroix flavors, it's like I don't even know what it's called. It's like a flower flavor. But like, do you think there's a lot of flavors that haven't even really been tested yet, where just because that like market area hasn't really been approached yet? Do you think that there's like a lot of different flavors and different mixes that are out there that just really haven't been tried yet?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of flavor combinations have been tried, but it doesn't matter if you haven't tried it, right?
Right.
Most breweries in the United States are servicing their local community. There are a handful of breweries that are nationwide. It's not even It's probably not even 10% of breweries are nationwide. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know that statistic if somebody wants to look it up. But so like most breweries probably have already combined. We've probably already created majority of flavor profiles that you could create in just mixing anything. Like I made a cilantro lime beer. Was it good? Some people loved it. Most people hated it. Um, I've made, we just made a mango uh, creamsicle ale with lactose and vanilla. Like there are such like wide varieties of flavors, but you haven't drank my mango lassie. You didn't try my cilantro lime beer, because I'm not nationwide throwing out new lines of product every week. If you want to do that, it is pay to play. You have to have the investment up front if you're going to have those products available nationwide. Like we couldn't even do that if we became the most popular brewery just by like word of mouth. We couldn't even service all of Arizona, right now. If we wanted to, we just can't. We don't have the space. We don't have the brewery. I would have to invest probably another $5 million to get to the next level. And then it's like 15, and then it's 30, and then it's all of a sudden it's $500 million if you're looking at like, the big beer companies, big beer, like even the Sierra Nevada and the Boston Beer Company. So yes, I do think that there are a lot of flavor profiles that have come out. And the Great American Beer Festival and other beer festivals that do competitions really are a great way to try those beers, because it's like these like nationwide beer festivals. They like pretty much, there's like two, like I think we just submitted for this year's, there was like 3,000 breweries that entered, which is not even half of the breweries in the country. But 3,000 breweries that enter, they throw out all of their best beers, their most popular, and the best ones win. So that's a great place to find like what are the best beer combinations that have been judged the best beer flavors. And there's like hundreds of styles that are judged. So that's a good place to look. But going back to like, we could find that, our blueberry basil beer is absolutely delicious and we decide to go all in on that one. But it's like the investment is very high from financially to even be able to get that into your hands in Ohio. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. And then also the opportunity cost too is like if you put a lot of effort into that, what are you sacrificing on the back end in terms
Right.
of expanding operations or even creating a new flavor?
Right. Or just like, are people going to like it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like you kind of push your product out, but if it's not good, people aren't going to buy it a second time. And then what? Then you're reinvesting even for like one of our beers to come out, to do like one style, one label, one canning line, one day of canning is like $10,000 for us. And we're a small brewery. That's a lot of money. Um, so like just imagine taking that and scaling it, 20-fold, and then it doesn't work. You know, it's crazy. It's interesting. Like the really the structure of beer. It's my first time that I'm using. I guess I did work a little bit in a consumable product with herbal essences, but not really. I didn't really work there very long. So, I this is really the first time I've ever made a consumable product. And it's just so interesting to me because I could sell you the same product every single day of the year and you drink it and you come back and you could drink it again tomorrow and you could come back and drink it again tomorrow, which is just crazy to me. It's just I've never created something like that. It's so different than making something that people use for the next 45 years, and don't buy another one for 45 years. It's just very different. So
Yeah. You also, I mean, you got to think about it too, is the satisfaction of your customers. much more indicative of your business, essentially, just because of the revenue frequency in which they're generating for your business. And then obviously your customer lifetime value. Are you keeping fresh products that keeps them around,
Right.
and et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So it is just a completely different space. And I understand, because we work in custom software where people typically buy one-off items, and it's significantly different than just selling, jeans or shoes that people just keep purchase again and again.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. It's a completely different mindset. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I think it's fun to think about where the future of beer is, and really making sure that we're in the space, and competing, and preparing our business to be able to compete.
Yeah. One thing, this is very awkward segue, but your logo is like really interesting and has like a really cool abstract look to it. Could you kind of talk about the kind of like the branding behind the logo?
Yeah, of course. So, the logo actually. So when I was still side gigging, I hired a marketing company, and they helped me conduct the survey, um, and I had this Her Story beer name that I was going to go with, and I had no idea what my business name was going to be. And I like when I was introducing myself, I had like bought this trade name, Elegant Beer Drinker, and I made like a website and everything around the Elegant Beer Drinker, which was mostly like a blog, and it had some of my statistics on it and stuff. But I was like, this is not a. Can you imagine like that being my brewery name, the Elegant Beer Drinker? It was absolutely atrocious for a business name. But I hired this marketing company to help me find a business name. And we went round and round in circles and circles and circles. And finally, they were like, you know what, Megan, I think you just have to go with your last name. You just have to go with your last name. It's like, paid this company. We went through all these things and ended up at my last name. Which is Greenwood, obviously. So when I was like sitting and thinking about a logo, originally my Elegant Beer Drinker logo was a woman. And like going through like the thought of the woman, I was like, how do you create a woman? Is she curvy? Is she smiling? What ethnicity is she? Like, it was just absolutely so many variables. And I was like, no way, we have to eliminate all of that. And so I was like, but I do want it to represent the people who are drinking the beer. As we grew, I knew that our theme was going to be empowerment, like just in general. Like, we were going to be a positive brand. We're not men haters. I love my husband. I love the men that are in my life. But we're going to be positive, and we're going to try to promote women, and empower women to do exactly what I'm doing, empower women to do exactly what they want to do. But ultimately, beer is drank by people. That is who. Without people, we have no product. So I wanted there to be a face. So there's a face in the center of our logo, representing the people who are drinking the beer. And then we have an arrow around the face, which is empowerment that surrounds our people, our organization, our business. And then it's a G for Greenwood. And I had like sketched this up like a year before it became our actual logo. So I sent it to our graphic designer, and she made it pretty and usable. And that's our logo. So since then, our brand pillars have continued to be empowerment, confidence, and inclusivity. And so like that really, I try to really drive that in every part of our business. We're a very inclusive space. And I think that people, when you look your best and feel your best, you're the most confident you can be. You represent yourself the best way possible. You ask for that raise. You go for that job. You take that leap. And so that's where confidence came from. And then, of course, empowerment. And so that is kind of the surrounding our logo. And we kind of came up as this like continued on. It was like all of this happened, over conversation. Like that is really where our like this story stems. Was like I was having conversations over craft beer, and I was drinking beer and having really good conversation. And so our slogan became the power of the purposeful pint, and having great conversation over craft beer. And so that's kind of what we tried to foster at our space today.
Heck yeah. I was actually just looking at your website just now, and the Greenwood Brewing Pocket Tea looks fire. Like, it looks so good. I was just like, it just caught my eye, and obviously we're talking about the logo, and I was inspecting it further, and then I came across the merch section, and all of it's pretty cool, but I really like that pocket tea. I think I'm going to buy one after this podcast.
Oh, thank you. Well, we'll have to send it to you because we are redoing our entire website, and we're redoing all of our merch for our 1-year anniversary. So we have all new merch coming. So you'll have to take a look in a week or so, because we have a new pocket tea too that you could check out.
Oh my God. I'm so excited. I love pocket teas. So yeah, I'll always wear one. Another thing on your menu too is that you guys have the looks like you guys have like the flagship list of IPAs and beers that you guys had. And how was the inaugural AM wheat?
Oh yeah, it's good. It's funny. We are like, I built the website. I have not maintained that website, so I'm cringing that you're looking at our website because it is not up to date. If you want to see what we're really selling, you have to really look at Untapped. That's probably where the majority of our beers are.
Gotcha.
Our American wheat kind of turned into a blueberry wheat, and it's our second best seller. It flies off our shelves. It's a really yummy beer. We just came out with our Emra, which is a light hazy IPA. It's short for Emerald, which we kind of coined as our future beer name, because we really love we really love the Emerald word and the history of it, and that it is green and it represents the earth and the trees. And Greenwood is actually, the definition of Greenwood is the keeper of the forest. And so it was like this kind of great pairing was Emra, mostly because a lot of beer names are already taken. A lot of like words are already beer names and trademarked. And so I in my previous life as in solar, one of my companies was a new startup that was buying product from us. And I remember them saying when they were going to build their business that their attorney recommended that they just make up a word, because that's typically the best way to trademark your product, is if you just make up a word instead of using an existing word, because likely it's already taken. So that's exactly what we did. And I took that advice from an old solar customer of mine. And we made Emra, and she's super juicy, absolutely delicious. It's only 3.6% ABV. Currently in a 16-ounce can, going to turn into that sleek 12-ounce can soon. But we just got that into retail. Really yummy beer for the summer. Something that like you could drink all day by the pool. And that's really what I'm trying to find. Like, we're trying to just like think about, where do we want people to be consuming our product? And as coming from manufacturing, my goal isn't really to have a tap room and a bar. Really, I kind of forgot actually that I was gonna own a bar when I was building the brewery. I was like, oh yeah, we are gonna have a bar. I totally forgot that this was gonna be like part of our everyday life. I'm actually like working on the tap room a lot more than I am the brewery these days, because I have a head brewer who is awesome, and she manages our whole beer program now. But we want to, in my history, it was coming from manufacturing, was like, my goal is to be in the hands of people that are off premise. So I want you to be consuming my beer at your house, with your friends, at your bachelorette party, with your, wherever, by a pool, on the river, on the boat, camping, hiking, doing activities. I would rather have you having my beer there than, and I want you to experience our culture at our tap room. And that's a lot of the reason why I chose downtown Phoenix, was because we have over 6 million people visit downtown Phoenix each year. Downtown Phoenix, the actual population of downtown itself in like our little corridor it's like it was 10,000 people like 3 years ago. It's now we're now doubling in population, but we're still only 20,000 people. It's really small, but we get over 6 million people coming to the Suns games. Go Suns! Coming to our Diamondback Stadium, coming to our convention center every single year, which is that's a lot of people. And so I wanted to really be able to have our space where people are coming so that they can experience our culture and our tap room when they come into town. Because everybody goes to Phoenix at least once in their life. Like everyone in America goes to Phoenix. I bet it's a very high percentage of people. And I want to be able to have our space so when you come, you can access our tap room and come and experience who we are and what we believe in. And then I want you to drink our beer when you're out with your friends and family and making memories. That's kind of my goal as a business moving forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. What would be the one beer that you would recommend to somebody stopping in for the first time?
Well, our hazy IPA is for sure our most popular. That's probably because it is a haze craze out there. Our rosemary IPA is super popular. It was came from an old homebrew day where I had the garden series as a homebrew, where we we had 3 different fermenting 5-gallon carboys, and we added a different herb to each, and rosemary was the winner beyond. And so it turned into one of our flagship beers. We now have it on tap at several restaurants on the menu. And it's awesome with food. It's great on its own. I'd say it's really super unique. That's really good. Our Pilsner is fantastic. I always like to say that if you're going to go to a brewery, one of the most difficult beers to make is a Pilsner. And if you want to see how good that brewery is, try their Pilsner, and it will show a lot about the brewery. So whenever I go to a new brewery, that's the first beer I drink is their Pilsner. And I think it does really showcase who you are as a brewery. And ours is, I think, we just had a beer judge actually come in, and it was our highest rated beer. It's really delicious. So I'd say try our Pilsner and then go for the rosemary IPA.
For sure. Why is the Pilsner like the litmus test for brewing?
So Pilsners are brewed differently. They're lager. Lagers are brewed differently than ales. They're fermented differently. And they also take the longest. So our Pilsner takes about 6 weeks to finish, to ferment, clarify, carbonate, and keg. So it is our most expensive beer. We spend the most on the yeast than we do on most other beers that we have. And it takes the longest. So I could make 3 of my ales in the time that we make 1 Pilsner. So just from a manufacturing cost, that's very expensive, just from the timing. Additionally, you are nurturing that beer every single day. You're either increasing temperature of that product or decreasing temperature daily. It's also extremely crisp and light, where you can't. There's very little hops that are in that beer, and they're not very strong smelling or tasting. So there's nothing to hide an off flavor. Whereas in a double IPA, you could have off flavors all day and just load up the hops, and it's great. but in a Pilsner, you cannot hide a single off flavor. You will taste it instantly, because there's nothing to hide it. It's a very crisp beer. It's, I think one of the crispest. I don't know if that's a word, but one of the most crisp that you can, of all the styles of beer. One of the cleanest, lightest in flavor, really. So that's why. So if you're going to a brewery, I'd recommend trying that Pilsner first, or
Heck yeah.
any lager in general. But most breweries, I'd say, typically try the Pilsner first. So
We'll have to do that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had absolutely no idea. Talk about the Suns for a minute, though. Are they going all the way this year?
Oh, they're going all the way.
Okay.
They're going all the way.
D-Book?
What?
D-Book's going to carry him.
Yeah. We'll see how it all goes. It's really vibrant downtown. I think we had ESPN downtown all week this week. And it's fun to see the Venetians really getting their spirit back, because a lot of people aren't from Arizona that live here. Most people, it's like 10% of people are from here that were born here. Most people moved to Phoenix. It's still a very adolescent city. I'd say, like, in Ohio, you guys have like cities that are probably like 200 years old, right? Or like 300
easily.
years old.
Like you have farms that have been in Michigan and Ohio that have been run by the same family for generations. Like I can think of 3 people right now that grew up in like farm towns, and the land has never changed hands, and it's like you said, 200 plus years of relatively the same neighbors.
Yeah, right. And so Arizona, for reference, we had our centennial, our 100-year anniversary of being a state in 2012. So like we just hit our 100 years of being in a state in America. Isn't that crazy? So
That is weird to think about.
God,
isn't that crazy? So when you think about it, like Arizona started to get more people once air conditioning was invented. And then now, obviously we know what's happened in the last 20, 30 years has been a big influx of people that were retired. And then their kids followed them, and then their kids had kids. And that, so now it's kind of like we're seeing people who have lived here, who were born here, but we also see a lot of people who followed their families here. So it's still like people still have their pride from their state. Like I even started that way today. I'm a Hawkeye. I still have my Iowa pride, but I have my Arizona pride equally. And there's a lot of people who came from outside of the state. So to see like everybody coming together for the Suns has been really fun, because it just brings like everybody's like pride for Arizona together. It's cool.
Yeah, for sure. And also too, I have 2 friends that went to ASU. Obviously, that's an attraction in itself. It's an absolute just gong show out there. It's a great time, and good at sports, great social life, and
Totally.
there's always stuff to do. So there's plenty of attractions, great weather as well, obviously.
Yeah, such a fun state, such a fun school, but also like super progressive, and it's like, and it's in all of the like majors you can have at ASU. It's crazy. And it's really grown. Actually, Arizona State is in downtown Phoenix, and that's really where a lot of the growth of downtown started. But like we're still defining our culture of who we are as a city. We're still defining our culture of our beer culture of Arizona. It's still like we're defining that. Greenwood Brewing is defining that. The brewery next door to me is defining that. Like there were 2 breweries that were in downtown in the past. Like I want to say in like the 90s, and then like the early 2000s there was another one. Both went out of business. I think like the 80s. I need to know this history. But both went out of business. And then there was one brewery that opened about 5 years ago, and she actually went out of business right before we opened. So there was one other brewery in downtown when we opened, and they were a brewery who it was their second or third location that they kind of have their community in like up in a different city. So Greenwood is like one of the first breweries in downtown and like first location in downtown Phoenix. So it's like, if you can think about that, there's 6 million people in Phoenix metropolitan, and we were the first brewery in downtown Phoenix that had was our first location at the time, which is crazy. It's still there's still so much opportunity, and because it's such a big small town, I run into it's like being in Iowa, where I run into all the people I know. That's the same thing. It's so bizarre to me that happens in a 6 million person city. But we're still defining ourselves. We're defining our beer. We're defining our breweries. We're defining our beer culture. And just like the whole culture of Arizona, of Phoenix, and defining who we are. It's cool. It's cool to be a part of it.
Yeah, for sure. You get to be a bit of a maverick and a trailblazer there. In terms of the brewing industry, what is one piece of advice that you would give to anybody looking to join the crusade?
Start a brewery?
Yeah.
Well, a couple of questions I would have first to them would be, do you love brewing? Is that why you want to become a brewery? And if you do love brewing and just want to brew, that's it. You don't want to be forward facing. You don't want to have the business side. I would say either my first piece of advice in general is just start somewhere. My very first meeting was Megan with the Elegant Beer Drinker at Pink's Boot Society. I introduced myself like that. It's embarrassing to talk about it even today. I laugh about it, but it was it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't nobody cares. You just need to start and get something to sell. And there's so much to do just in those two things because there's so much red tape around alcohol. So you just need to start and get a product that you can sell to anyone, and you'll find a customer that's willing to buy it. And then I would say if you're the one that really loves to brew, maybe first join a brewery, find a partner that is willing to be the business person, and then start your brewery. Because I think one thing that I am so grateful for is my head brewer, Kristen Luparello. We had talked 2.5 years before I opened the brewery, and I was like, if you ever wanted to be a head brewer, I knew I wanted to have her as my head brewer, and I knew I wasn't going to be that person. I knew somebody was going to have to make sure our beer was coming out fantastic, and that was not going to be me, because somebody else is going to have to grow the business and be the business person and be the manufacturing and design the manufacturing and make sure we have the products and the inventory. That has to be a different person. So if you're solo and you don't want to brew and you only want to brew, find a partner. If you don't and you want to find a brewer, great, then find that brewer. But just start with something. When I started, I did a Post-it note a day. And sometimes that Post-it note was literally send an email to one customer, ask for a meeting. It was so simple. But that was 365 more things than I did the last year. It's my husband always says this, is if you threw one punch every day, you're going to get so much stronger than if you threw 1,000 punches in one day, So if you do one thing every day, you're going to grow so much faster than if you do 365 things in one day, So just start small, and things will just start coming to you. tell people your idea, get it out there, get the energy flowing, and then all of a sudden people are going to be like, you're going to meet that tap room manager that's going to say, oh yeah, I think we have some open fermenters, and then you're going to take off.
Heck yeah, it's really good advice. So we're gonna start to wind down the podcast a little bit. We always like to ask a fun question at the end. So one question that I would like to ask is, do you have any good ghost stories from the brewery? And if not, do you have any good ghost stories in general?
Ghost stories? Oh, that's funny. Like ghosts, like actual ghosts?
Oh yeah.
Or anything like paranormal, I would say.
Yeah.
Really, yeah.
When I was younger, I felt like there was a ghost that followed me around. And when I don't have anything from the brewery because I think that it's still trying to get from Boston to Phoenix. That's a pretty long hike, so still has to get all the way here. It hasn't got to the brewery yet. But I had we had this house that was built, I don't even know, probably in like the 30s or something. And I had like a room downstairs in the basement that was freezing, which is always like what you think is like paranormal activity in like the coldest room. And I would just have weird things happen. Like one time I was sitting in our basement and we had like a phone that had a long cord on it because we'd sit like it's on the wall and we'd sit along on the couch talking to our friends at night. And so we'd sit on the phone and I'd like look over and our cord would just be swinging back and forth and there'd be like no one else in the house. And I remember that. I mean, that was like one of my paranormal experiences, but there's just little things I feel like that would happen. Maybe it was like a spirit or a guardian angel or something being like, hey, I'm here. But and then it just would kind of make things move, I feel like, as I got older. So I kind of feel like this ghost friend of mine is gonna come back here, gonna find me in Phoenix after living in Iowa and living in Boston and living in Phoenix. We'll see. I'll keep you posted if something happens in the brewery.
Please do.
Yeah.
And then I was just gonna ask, if you are, if you're brewing, if you're having some drinks and a little bit of research and development, that next day, what is your hangover recipe for having one too many?
Oh my God. My hangover food is like very weird. It's a Subway sandwich, which is so weird. So that always makes me feel better is when I eat like a Subway sandwich, which is like gross when you think about it. But if I'm about to, I don't know that I have ever found one. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't think I found one. Unless you just keep drinking. That's always a good one. Probably a screwdriver in the morning or some type of a Bloody Mary will make you feel better. But I always find that like if I was super hungover the next day, I end up, if I want to drink that night, want to have a drink that night, I always end up drinking wine on my hungover days, which is like anti-beer. But I always find that ends up making me feel a little better the next day. Just kind of ironic.
I will say, I would say most people that we talk to, a little bit like the hair of the dog the next day. That's typically the response. But I've also heard some crazy ones, like going to sleep with like wet socks or like
running.
That was a weird one.
Huh.
We've had some weird ones.
Running with
the Subway sandwich.
Subway sandwich. That's my thing. But I feel like you have to eat before you go to bed. And you have, like, if you shower and you eat before you go to sleep, I feel like you're going to feel at least 50% better the next day.
Absolutely have to eat before you go to bed. No disputing that. And hopefully you have like Pedialyte or Gatorade or something alongside that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that Subway sandwich the next day.
Yep. Do you have any questions for us?
Thanks for having me. As you guys are young in the beer world as just coming out of college, where do you think beer is going to go? How do you think as you get older, how do you think you're going to consume beer?
Well, I know I'm very open-minded when it comes to beer, so I'm just going to try anything that looks delicious. But for my own belief of where I think beer is going to go, I personally think beer has, this might just be me, but I feel like beer's really taken off over the past year, and I feel like the whole craft beer industry has really kind of started to boom. And I think there's going to be a lot of really cool, different options to pick from, even in the near future.
You think like you're gonna, what do you think your buying traits are gonna be though? Like, are you gonna continue to buy local? Are you gonna continue? Do you think you're gonna like seek out that local, that local beer, or do you think that you're gonna kind of find, like, do you see yourself like finding that one beer and like buying it and always having it in your fridge?
I don't know if I were to come across something where I'm just like, oh wow, this is delicious, then maybe I'll stay to it. But I always like to try new things. So like I've been in like a whiskey phase, so like I go to town on that. When I say to go to town, I mean like have like one glass a night. But then like after I get through that phase, like I'll be like, okay, well, now I really want to get into craft beer. So then I'll get into craft beer, and then maybe there's like a certain type of craft beer that I like. I'm just kind of all over the place, and like if I see like a flavor that sounds good, I'll go for it. But I'd say like long term, I don't think I'm ever gonna settle down onto one specific thing. I'm probably gonna continuously be adventurous, I think.
Yeah, I would say I'm pretty basic. I just go with like what's cool at the time. So for a long time, I had, in college I had, Busch Light or Natty Light, whatever. Then Budweiser, and then now I'm starting to get more into like seltzers, like Belgian beers, pale ales, and I just kind of like stock my fridge with those. And whatever is trendy next, I'll probably just hop on board. I'm pretty basic in that sense. In terms of what's in the fridge, just because it's usually like a crowd pleaser if I have people over. In terms of going out, though, I always love trying like whatever's in Toledo, whether it's like Ernest Brewing or Funky Turtle or Q&T, whatever. But I wish I had a good answer. I really don't. I just kind of go with what's in front of me.
But then like also, I don't think we're good representations of like the general like our generation, just because we have like the background of doing the podcast. We're like a little more involved in the scenes, so I think we're definitely not like representative of like our age group, I would say, because I think our age group is more focused on, at least like right now, is like more focused on like seltzers, just standard beers. They're not, I don't think they're as involved in the craft beer industry, but there's still a pretty good amount that are. But I think it's a fine mix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to understand. Like, I'm just so curious what big beer is going to turn into, and
I think it has a good future, personally.
I mean, like, hot take, it's going to be, in my opinion, this is where I see it going, just because we have interviewed a lot of people from all walks of life within the food and beverage industry. I think it's going to be similar to the distilling industry, specifically whiskey, where before it was acceptable, like in 80s, 90s, you could pretty much have any sort of bourbon or whiskey on display within your household. Then it became a sense of pride in like the 2000s to have, class whiskey. And now in the 2010s, you've seen a little bit of a revolution towards, flavored whiskey, trying something a little bit different, maybe flavored gin, get a little bit more creative. And I think that's where brewing is heading, and just being in terms of creativity. I think we're going to keep seeing accentuated flavors of different palettes that we probably haven't seen before. I know, Dan, your favorite of recent has been the s'mores.
Oh yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if stouts start to take off, and stouts bring in maybe like a caramel coffee or like a French vanilla. I just think stouts are probably going to be an in thing for a while, just because of how creative you can get with those.
Mm-hmm. And I think one comparison, like this might be in the more later future, but one comparison, I could almost see it turning into almost like how the cable industry started to die down, as like you have all these different platforms. I think that similarly, you have all these different breweries that are able to make like these really good beverages. And I think the same kind of trend line is going to happen where you're going to start to see, obviously the mainstream beverages are going to be out there doing fine, but you're going to start to see less of that, and you're going to start to see more breweries, in my own personal opinion, just because you have like you have a larger choice to get, in my opinion, higher quality beer, because it's not as
mainstream.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hot take. I like that one, Dan. I like that one a lot.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it's good perspective. I feel like every generation feels differently about beer because their experiences have been different, and the accessibility to different styles has transformed so vastly in the last, since the 80s. You know, in the 80s, home brewing, like the laws around home brewing changed, and that's why beer took off. I mean, before the Prohibition, there were, I don't even know how many breweries, a lot of breweries. And then post-Prohibition, it was pretty much just a handful. And then the laws changed, and then home brewers just like took off. And that is where a lot of people fell in love with brewing and the craft of brewing. And, you know, stemming from that is where we see over 8,000 breweries now in the United States, which is still not very many, to be honest. We have 350 million people in the States, you know, 8,000 breweries. I mean, there's still so much room to grow from there, too. So.
Absolutely. And if anybody wants to keep up with your journey, where can they find you on, social media, in person?
Yeah.
What are your socials?
So I run our Instagram. That's where we probably, where you can find me the easiest. It's at Greenwood Brewing. We just started our Twitter, which is at Greenwood Brews, which has been really fun. And then our website is greenwoodbrews.com. And if you need to get a hold of us, you can, or if you want to get a hold of me, you can connect with any of those, and you will get my direct line. So follow us on social media, and that's the best way to see our journey.
Well, thank you, Megan. Megan Greenwood, founder of Greenwood Brewing. Really appreciate you having you on the show, and this episode will be out pretty soon, so we'll keep you posted.
Thank you so much, guys.
All right, After Hours Nation, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to stay updated, you can check out our site at afterhourscast.com. Don't forget to tune in next Tuesday morning for our next episode. After Hours Nation, stay thirsty, my friends.